Listen to the audiobook, The Financier, by Theodore Dreiser, Level B1. You will find parts 1 and 2 in the description and on our channel. Part 3.
I know about your relationship with this horrible man. How could you? Oh, what a shame. You'll come with me immediately. He took her by the arm and led her out of the house. Then they got in his carriage and left. Eileen remained silent the whole way. As they reached their house and entered the living room together, Mr. Butler cried, "Please, Eileen, you must leave him." "No, Father, you don't understand," she replied calmly. "We love each other, and I will marry him once he gets a divorce from his wife." "A divorce?" shouted Mr. Butler. "He won't ever leave her for you. He is a fraud, Eileen, a criminal, and he is going to prison." "He is nothing like that," she exclaimed. "I know what you've been up to. Frank knows too. You're trying to put him in prison for something he didn't do. But I don't care. I'll wait for him, and I'll marry him no matter what." Frank asked the banks once again to extend the time limit for paying off his debts, but they refused him. In an emergency like this, he couldn't possibly have any time. The following afternoon at 2:30, he organized a meeting with his creditors, and at 5:30, he put his business into the hands of a receiver. And yet, as he stood there before them, he did not feel that his life was destroyed. He was embarrassed, yes, but only for a while. It was essential for him to see Mollenhauer and Simpson. But before that, he went to see his old friend, Harper Steger. He was an experienced lawyer. "Let them proceed against you," advised Steger. "I don't think it will be more than a simple technical charge. In the worst case, they will charge you with irresponsibility." "It all depends on the politicians' plans," replied Frank. "I'll be charged with whatever they want me to be." Butler, Mollenhauer, and Simpson were aware of the dangers that might appear if someone investigated into the whole city treasury affair. As members of the Republican Party, they needed to show themselves in the best light. So they decided to apply to the court themselves, making Frank a scapegoat. They wrote a fake letter to the mayor, under the name of Stenner, in which they accused Frank of stealing the state's money. And so, on October 26, 1871, Frank Cowperwood was arrested and called to court. The day of his trial, he felt as if he was walking in his sleep. Was he really Frank Cowperwood, the man who had been so rich and respectable just 2 months ago? Eventually, he was found guilty and sentenced to 4 years and 3 months in prison. As for Stenner, he was sent to prison for 5 years. 14. Frank spent weeks waking up at 5:30 and retiring at 9, making his bed, sweeping the floor, eating, dressing, and undressing again, and wondering about his cruel fate. It was really odd how life had dealt with him. Without Frank's supervision, Mr. Cowperwood's business started declining. Soon he didn't have enough money to stay in his house anymore, and it was put up for sale. Within days, nothing remained of the fancy Cowperwood houses. Eileen felt very badly about it, but she didn't lose hope. She strongly believed that one day Frank would come out of prison and work his way to an even greater position in the financial world. Since the day of his arrest, Lillian had been hearing from people that he was still very close to Eileen Butler. She felt really sorry for Frank because he was shut up in a prison cell, but she thought that he got what he deserved. She didn't love him anymore. He had cheated on her and received a fair punishment for it. One day, Eileen went to visit him. Frank had made his cell look as neat and welcoming as possible, but still he was worried. Eileen had always admired his gentlemanly manners and good taste in clothes. She had never seen him in such a poor state. But he tried to calm down, thinking that whatever he wore, he was still the same Frank Cowperwood she loved. When she came and saw his old, misshapen clothes, his worn-out shoes, and his narrow, crumpled cell, she couldn't hold back her emotions. Frank looked at her softly and said, "It's all right." She reached out to him and put her arms around him, crying, "My darling, my poor Frank, what have they done to you?" She held him close and stroked his head, and he just stood there quietly in her arms, shaking all over. Her love for him was so full, so real. A strange feeling came over him, and for the first time in his life, Frank Cowperwood shed a tear. With an effort, he fought down his desire to cry and drew himself away from Eileen. "You shouldn't be ashamed to cry, my dear," she said softly, and took his hand. "No matter what, I'll never leave you. I'll always love you." And she really meant it. What was her family compared to her love for Frank? It was nothing. She was going to do whatever he wished, whatever would make him happy. 15. One day, some 4 months after Frank had been put in prison, Lillian came to visit him. She brought him some food and clothes. "There's something I want to talk to you about, Lillian," he started, looking very serious. "I'm sure you know about my relationship with Eileen Butler. I'm in love with her, and I'd like to marry her if I ever come out. This means that you will have to agree to a divorce." "Yes, I knew you would say something like that," she replied. "It's a suitable way to pay me for all my love for you, Frank. We have 2 children, and yet you had to fall for this Butler. You should be ashamed of yourself. She is just a shameless, poor-mannered girl, and she doesn't care about people's opinions." "Lillian, I don't think it makes sense to play a happy family any longer," he said. "I don't love you anymore. I did when I married you, but I was just a boy who didn't know what he was doing. Of course, I'm not using it as an excuse, but I don't mean to pretend that I still care for you. I ask you to let me go. Believe me, once I am out of here and back on my feet again, I will support you and the children, so long as I have the money to give you. But I need you to give me my freedom." "I have always known it," she said sadly, "but I just refuse to admit it. You care for no one but yourself, Frank. You shouldn't think of a divorce. I won't give it to you." "I don't want to stay in Philadelphia," Frank went on indifferently. "My idea is to go west, and I think I want to go alone. It would be better for you if you agreed a divorce and stayed here with the children. People would think better of you." "I won't do it," replied Lillian in a determined voice. "You're a horrible man, Frank. I don't think you even have a heart. You don't deserve to be happy." With that, she rushed to the door at the end of the hallway. "Well, hard words break no bones," Frank told himself calmly. 16. 13 months passed since the day Frank had entered prison. Edward Butler died, and his funeral was attended by a lot of politicians and city officials. They all discussed whether his death had anything to do with his youngest daughter's poor behavior. Meanwhile, Frank's lawyer, Steger, had a petition signed by numerous important financiers and brokers and sent it to the governor. The petition stated that Frank's punishment had been unfair. And so, early in March of 1873, the governor issued a pardon for Frank, in which Stener's pardon was also included. Frank was glad to finally be free. He was thinking of Eileen, his children, his parents, and his whole future. He was going to get himself a seat on the exchange again through his friends, and he was going to be rich. On September 18, 1873, the greatest financial tragedy occurred in Philadelphia. J. Cook & Company, the biggest banking house in the United States, closed its doors. Before failing, J. Cook, the greatest financier in the United States, had been handling the construction of the Northern Pacific. It was the greatest railroad line that was to run across the whole country, connecting the Atlantic and the Pacific. It was a $100 million affair that involved the money of hundreds of thousands of people all over the land, and now all of them were in a panic. The prices of all stocks had gone down at once. Everyone rushed to sell their stocks, hoping to raise some cash. They didn't know what was going to happen. The banks were falling like trees in a storm. At that time, Frank Cowperwood was once again a broker, or rather a broker's agent. At first, he couldn't believe the news. For the whole country, it was a tragedy, but for him, it was a long-awaited opportunity. Frank knew exactly what he should do. He hurried to the exchange to sell all the stocks he had. The more companies were failing in New York, the more panic brokers were making on the exchange. They were ready to buy anything to survive the catastrophe. That, of course, worked very much in Frank's favor. He was selling his stocks as high as he could and buying other stocks as low as he could. He was perfectly calm among hundreds of panicking men, and he knew he was going to make it. If I get out of this safely, this is it, he thought. I am going west. Within a few days, he managed to earn a fortune worth millions of dollars. They caught me once, but they will never catch me again, he thought. I have learned my lesson. Now I am a millionaire, and I am a free man. I am only 36 now, and my future is all in front of me. With that thought, he went to visit Eileen. Some 3 months later, they sat in a train that was speeding west to Chicago. The West, Frank believed, promised much. Lillian had agreed to a divorce. She had become religious and concentrated all her forces on the care of her children. It's good to be going finally, Eileen said. Well, yes, Frank replied. It's the right thing to do.
The more you listen, the faster you'll become fluent in English. Subscribe to our channel for more English stories to improve your English. And now, listen to another audiobook.